Yeah, thank you, Veronica. Thank you for having me. I have to give a small disclaimer first. I'm not working for the German government. This is quite important because I wanted to talk about the IPv6 program that we have in Germany, and which is quite successful. But then during the last week, they told me, no, I'm not allowed to do. So read between the lines, please. But I'm self-employed, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm working as a consultant for this program, but I'm not a member of the German government. So we have a few very large organizations, and we try to move them to IPv6. And we have some of them, of course, in the public sector. We have some of them in the private sector. First, 2 words to me, about me. So I've been doing IPv6 since 2008, quite a few years. I'm in the German IPv6 Council, and I've done 30 plus years of networking. And I run 2 companies, one in Boston, one in Berlin, and we try to move people, companies to IPv6, and we've written a tool to help them. So more in the break if you want to. Large organizations. What are large organizations? You can see it by employees, you can see it by geography, by revenue. Revenue is not if you are in the public sector, so we are talking about large organizations from the view of many employees and many people working there and many devices on the networks. We are not talking about geography and revenue. You can imagine in a large country like Germany, we have a lot of large networks because of geography. Think of our Autobahn, think about the rail system in Germany. But we are talking about people here. We are talking about organizations with 50,000 and more people. So one example from the private space is Volkswagen in Wolfsburg. If you ever have been there, they have a production plant that is 2 kilometers long. That is the smaller one. The larger one is behind. They have roughly 70,000 people just on this one site. So this is absolutely phenomenal. When I said to them, okay, let's move to IPv6 only and give a 64 to each and every PC running on the network, said, oh, then we need 48 networks because we have more than 65,000 devices running. So you seldomly see networks like this. And if you look at the public sector, we have the German pension system. They have roughly 65,000 people working for them. So we pay into the pension, and they pay 65,000 salaries first, and then everyone else gets money. And they have more than 500 sites they operate. So they have a network connecting these more than 500 sites, and this network has to be moved to IPv6 eventually. So this is what I consider a large network in the context of my today's talk. So in these large organizations, we always get the same questions. Sometimes you can get these questions in smaller organizations as well, but they don't have that many opportunities to start IPv6. So where do I start? In large organizations, they have data centers, they have backbones, they have all technologies, they have wireless, they have a lot of IoT. The German pension system is running their own hospitals, so you have all this medical equipment as IoT. They have no idea what skills are needed. Usually they know they have to learn something about IPv6. In the public space, you always have the question, agile or traditional, waterfall or agile. And public sector and agile sometimes is a little bit difficult. Yeah, but it's going to work. They are moving. They are moving. Sometimes snails are a little bit faster, but they are moving. And the question is how to organize the project. What is needed to run a project in the public sector environment? So these are the 4 main questions we get. And we don't get these questions that they want to prove what we know. They really have no clue. So, where to start? We tell them, have an easy start. Have an easy start. Find a small step where you can start. Like a little cell of your body. The little cell in your network. Could be 2 routers. You have an organization of 500 sites and we tell them start with 2 routers. They always think we have to start with the first 500 routers. No, that's not going to work. Maybe between 2 databases, that you can synchronize between 2 databases. That's a good starting point for first IPv6 implementation. And then they try to look into the network. Where could be a good place to start? Usually you have, if we have a web server, you have a web server, some middleware and some databases behind it. So between middleware and database could be a good idea. Maybe you have a test environment, you have a software development test environment. There you can start. And the larger the organization is, the smaller the first step should be, because they have to start. They are so large that they don't start if you don't give them a small starting point. If you have identified the first step, then do a detailed inventory and detailed IPv6 inventory of the first step. So ask them, can I look into your configuration management database? There you have all your inventory. And then we just have to add a little bit of IPv6. Or what is a configuration management database? Sometimes you have to start there. They have a few Excel sheets, usually split on different laptops, all in different versions. So IPv6 is a good option to do some work here. After you have done the detailed inventory, ask the question, is the first step still a good candidate? The candidate that you have identified? Maybe not. If yes, do some testing, some planning, and do some implementation. If no, you have to find another point where you start. Here, you could say, well, we made a mistake by identifying the first possible step. And making mistakes in the public sector, no, better don't do it. So don't do anything. And after the first step, you have to celebrate publicly. You have to celebrate openly, because IPv6 does not hurt, and it works. But nobody believes in it. And then find the next step, possibly a larger step, and repeat until you are finished. And in organizations like this, you will never finish. Well, I will give you a number from the network of one of the large enterprises in Germany. You know these chassis-based switches? We had Catalyst 6500, they have them from another vendor. Switches like this. They have 350 pairs. So if they do a software update on one pair each day, they finish at New Year, they start at New Year's Eve and they finish at Christmas. And then it starts all over again. So this is a size, if you want to implement IPv6 in networks like this, you have to do it in a little bit larger chunks, but you have to start small. Skills. We talked about IPv6 skills, or the lack of IPv6 skills, during our meeting in April here in London. And of course, nobody knows about IPv6. We talked about universities not teaching IPv6. We still have this problem. We will have it for a long, long time. But if you want to migrate the network as large as I'm talking about, you need project management. Nobody thinks about project management, and you need project managers who understand IPv6 and who understand the needs of the IT teams. And you need leadership to bring all of the departments to one table. Usually the networking guys don't talk to the Windows guys and they ignore Linux. Have you all experienced? We have to bring them to one table, and then you have to have the application guys there and the software developers. So you need leadership. And of course you need leadership, because I heard it personally, IPv6 is important, but not before I retire, from someone who is 35. This does not speed up your project. So somehow you have to force them into the project, or you have to convince them. So both is possible, but you need this leadership, and if you start an IPv6 project in an organization that large, then you need a sponsor. You need someone from top management who helps you with it, who says, yes, it is important, we have to do that. And we have that in Germany, in the public sector. The German CTO, directly under in the Ministry of Interior, directly under the minister, is supporting this, and is actively supporting this. And this is why we have success. So skills, IPv6 skills, very good, but we need the other skills as well. Then the question about agile or traditional. I'm not talking about Scrum or Kanban. Agile can be just not waterfall. Agile means working in small steps and means learning from mistakes. It means making mistakes. And this is so important for large organizations who are not used to this way of working. But there is no other chance to implement IPv6 in networks like this, in organizations like this, because they are so large. You have to learn from success as well, and you have to get better. And if you go the traditional way, you do one step after the other. You do your inventory, and then you write your configuration, or whatever. Step 2 depends on step 1. That means you have to finish with step 1 before you do step 2. And this looks something like this. Maybe you have seen this before. We call it waterfall. And the question is not a technological question about whether you do agile or a waterfall, traditional. It's about controlling. And it's about time. If you want to stretch your project, your IPv6 project to 20 years, go the traditional way. You can spend all the time there. We have too many departments involved, then you have meeting over meeting over meeting because you have to talk to everyone. Everyone has an opinion. I think you know it all from your projects. Waterfall does not work for IPv6. But bring this idea into the public sector. This is new for them. Go small steps, learn, test, implement, learn, test, implement, learn, test, implement. This is a successful way, and the larger the organization, the more important this is. If something goes wrong, and this is a new concept, things can go wrong. The consequences are not too bad. Yeah? If something explodes, the crater is not that big. Build up your experience and your confidence. Many of these guys in these large organizations in the public sector, I see it in the private sector as well, they just fear new things. They fear new technology. Build up your confidence. And last but not least, agile or traditional, who does control your project? If you do it in small steps, you can do it with your organization, you gain the knowledge, you have the control, you can set the pace that you go forward. If you do the traditional way, do the inventory over 500 sites, then it's your consultants. And they make sure that you have no control over your project. You have control about the paycheck you send them every month. But you don't have any control over the project and you learn nothing. And they are doing the project. So that is really what we see in the public sector, that consultancies want to take control and they want to keep control. Sometimes they even have control. So they start a new, smaller project and send 40 people in. Of course they take control of it. So if you want to have control over your project, be agile and make it possible for your customer to do the implementation on their own. The next question we always get is how to organize the project. If you want to have control, you need something like let's say, knowledge management. You need to get everyone on the table, but a mistake is made in Department A must not be a mistake done by Department B. Bring all the knowledge together. This is very important, but this sometimes is a new concept as well. And you have that in the private sector as well. Do you really think Volkswagen and Audi talk to each other? No, not really. Have so-called coaches or guides. If you run the project, if you're responsible for the project, to help the departments to start with IPv6. Don't run their project, but help them, guide them, teach them. Offer learning, offer training. This is so important. And in-house training is much more important than external training. If you have someone in your organization who can do a short presentation, half an hour, maybe 1 hour about a subject, and all the colleagues listen, then they are in a discussion. If you send them to a 3 days training, they don't get anything individual, and it's too expensive. So this is a great factor of success. Do offer learning and training, have a knowledge management, knowledge database that all departments use. And it can't be the books. Cisco guys never touch Windows literature, and the other way around. Have you ever seen someone from a Windows department reading a Cisco press book? No. So this is about project organization. So if you build your project as a wall, offer learning and training, as I said, have these coaches. These coaches go into the organizations, and we do this in the IPv6 program. We have these coaches that go into the organizations and help them. We are not running their project. We are going to help them to get IPv6 addresses, to do an addressing plan, to find the first place where to start, the first small step. But we are not running their project. We are not a group of 40 taking over everything. Well, go into good contact with the vendors. One of the reasons I'm so happy here that we have Cisco here, Cisco is of course a host, we have Microsoft here, because you have to talk to the vendors. They come with new information, you have questions, there have to be bug fixes, but it has to be this informal contact. So this is very, very important, and it is quite insightful for the vendors because they get questions and ideas how they can improve their products. They are developing them in their laboratories, but not in practice, so they have to learn. Knowledge management for all departments. One place to look up information about the protocol, about the implementation, how it is done in your organization, and everyone participates and everyone gives information into this database. Controlling and management is very important. If you run a project of that size without the attendance of management, it will fail. You need their help. As a leadership, as I said, leadership skills are needed, but you need the budget. It is a multi-year project, so you need time, you need staffing, so you need these guys. Even if you think they don't understand what you are doing, then make them understand. And this is of utmost importance. In the federal project in Germany, we have this one guy at the top who influences all up to, I think, 240 organizations of the federal government to make IPv6 happen. This is very, very important, otherwise you can't do it. And from my perspective, take control of your project. If you don't control your own project, someone else runs it, someone else runs your network, someone else runs your security, someone else runs your firewall, and if you are hacked and if you're attacked, it's your fault. And of course not the fault of the consultants, they did all they could do. So take control. Thank you very much. Have you got any questions? Jen, the usual suspects.
Yes, someone who rolled out V6 in the large organization. It's not a question, it's a comment. I guess you imply it, but maybe it's worth calling out explicitly that somewhere on your steps, you might want to stop the bleeding and make sure that greenfield stuff, whatever those people deploying, new things, get V6 on default, because otherwise you'll be chasing the horizon. You're rolling out V6 in the systems, on the network, and new stuff being deployed with only, and then you never finish. So it's a kind of job security, but if you want to finish, yeah, you might have an explicit step. From now on, in this part of in this system, we're doing V6 on by default, and we don't do with only.
So you talked about the green field. It's a little bit hard to understand the questions. I didn't see that when I was asking questions, because all the speakers are facing to your side. There will be no greenfield. That's part of your questions, I think, of your comment.
So the question was, when you've got greenfield deployments happening while you're transitioning, how do you, well, the comment was, do you enforce that anything new that's being deployed has to support IPv6? Otherwise, you're not going to stop the bleeding. Otherwise, you're going to be chasing your tail forever.
If you start with a new project, and there are new projects everywhere, do IPv6, and if you can do IPv6 only in the network and IPv4 as a service. And then you come to all of this. Well, this usually should work, and you have to do this, of course. But there is not much greenfield, because large organizations are quite stable. And you still have a lot of this IoT stuff that has to be connected. That is there. There will never be any greenfield there. But anything that is done, everything that's new, has to be done dual stack or IPv6 only. IPv6 only should be the preferred way, if possible. Then go to the vendors and tell them, I want to do IPv6 only. Okay, we have a mandate in our tendering that you have to support IPv6. So this is sometimes still today we are in 24, aren't we? And we have been talking about IPv6 for so many years, and we've got these RIPE documents about IPv6 tendering. And we have met one vendor who is doing crypto equipment for the German government. And we asked them about their IPv6 capabilities. The answer was short, nothing. Are you going to implement it? Yeah, maybe next year. So, if you use these guys and build something new, then you're lost. Thank you very much.